Right. Hello and welcome to the Replimat, for God's sake. This is terrible. Right, okay. Hello and welcome to the Replimat, a regular chatcast in which one seasoned fan and one ingenue make their way through Star Trek Deep Space Nine in chronological order. I am the ingenue. My name is Tim. Hello, everyone, and the seasoned fan is
me, Andy. Hello.
hello. And this week, viewer and listener, we are looking at episode 21 of season 2 of DS9, which is the Maquis Part 2. It was directed by Corey Allen, and Part 1 was directed by someone else. Story was by Rick Berman, Michael Piller, Jerry Taylor, and Ira Stephen Bear. And the teleplay was by Ira Stephen Bear. And according to Netflix, Sisko, Kira, and Bashir are held in a Maquis camp. But Gul Dukat is not there. Wow.
Dramatic.
Yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that's
on the edge of my
revealing. So revealing.
It is, yes.
It's that dramatic description, yeah.
Yeah, as descriptions go, that's really going to grab you by the knackers and draw you in, isn't it? So
sort of sucks you in, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed. So we've got part 2 of a two-parter.
Yes.
Yeah, and I to be perfectly honest, it was only when I looked at the stats for this I realised I hadn't noticed previously if any of the other two-parters had been directed by different people, each part directed by a different person. And also I did note that
I can tell you now, as a matter of
story
course,
by and teleplay by were by different people each time. They were mainly the same people, but the final polisher, as it were, I think was different for each episode. So has that been the case up to now? And
I can tell you this for sure. When it comes to multi-part stories on DS9 or just Star Trek, really, there'll usually be story by usually the same people because they presumably have smart to actually develop the arcs in one. But the usual teleplay is almost always given, because later in the series in particular, when they do like multi-part stories, they'll obviously plot the story out. Like, say, all the execs will get together and say, right, this is what we want, blah, 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 blah. You go away, write this episode, you go this episode, because obviously, they're up against it. So, like, say, 3 or 4, whoever, go off and write the separate episodes. And I imagine each one has a little bit of tweaking from various people. In terms of directors, almost always, for some reason, I don't know why on Star Trek, not just Star Trek, actually, in multi-part stories on any show, really, it tends to be different actors. What was I watching the other day? I was watching something which had a two-parter where a cliffhanger scene gets picked up straight away. Actually, it was Prisoner Cell Block H. So it's like on any episode of TV, I guess, where one scene finished, big cliffhanger for Cell Block H anyway, and the next episode is directed by a different person, but the scene carries on. I know that happens in Star Trek a lot. It happens in X-Files. It happens in everything, really. Even today, like say Discovery, for instance, or Picard, which are modern Trek shows, because they're obviously serialized, well, more so than now. Oftentimes, the last scene will continue almost directly on the next episode, but it'll be a different director. Almost all the time. So it's a common TV thing. Apart from in Doctor Who, when they're multi-part stories, they tend to be one director, one recording block. So I'm assuming it's just I don't know. I can't imagine having 2 directors for 2 episodes of a 2-part story in this case. I can't see how that benefits the story.
No, I mean,
really, I don't see how that would benefit.
What I got from this is that part 2 was very different to part 1. I felt the pace, the tone, the action and stuff in part 2 was very different to part 1. Part 1 was quite a leisurely build to to the situation. Part 2 was much more kind of pace and action focused, I felt. So it could be that they kind of cast the director for each episode specifically, or it could be that is actually a result of having different directors for each episode. Is that the second one's come in and gone, right, no, this is how we're going to do this. Let's bang bang bang. Let's up the let's up the pace. So yeah, it was generally a very enjoyable second part, a very enjoyable two-parter overall, which is all which is great as far as I'm concerned. Lots of lovely moments and lovely scenes, particularly with Gul Dukat. He came across very well.
I think Dukat really comes into his own. Yeah.
Yeah. I
think Dukat comes well into his own this time round.
I like that, and the legate guy was good as well. Obviously, very well cast, because obviously a very mature, avuncular kind of actor underneath all of that prosthetics and stuff, and it just comes through in
like I said during the watching. He was played by John Shook, who our viewers, assuming they watch Star Trek Beyond DS9, will know from Star Trek 4 and Star Trek 6 as the Klingon ambassador. And he has such a great performance, because I remember watching like Star Trek 4 way, way, way back when. And he's like, there'll be no peace until James Kirk is dead. And his diction, his projection, all of it, it's like you can see this is a stage actor. He really knows how to project. And even on this show, because he hasn't got any big, huge scenes where he's talking out, but you can just hear it in his voice. It's like he's got a rich voice.
Pretty charismatic.
Great casting.
Yeah, exactly, because he's not in the episode for very long, but he needs to have an impact for those scenes that it's just the one scene, isn't it? Really, he needs to have an impact in that in that scene, in those few minutes, and he really does, because it's such a fulsome performance. It's wonderful. So I did
tell you another. Another guest star for this particular episode. Again, only has, I think, 2 scenes, or possibly only 1 scene actually, and that's Natalia. Her surname was it Natalia Gulich? If I saw it, I'd be able to pronounce this, but it's like Nagulich or something very strange. Well, I say strange. No offense if you're watching this. It's a not normal. Not an easily pronounced surname, I'll say that. Who plays Admiral Nechayev?
Yes.
Who you obviously have seen in Journey's End, and she's been in Next Gen a few times in the last couple of seasons. And she's such a great. I like the character. Every time she turns up on the Enterprise, you like, oh God, now what? Because she's usually bringing bad news with her. And even on this episode, she turns up, and you're like, this ain't going to go well for Sisko, because she turns out it never goes well. Apparently, she's in a documentary on... what is it she's talking about? I think she's talking about her appearance... What is it? I saw some documentary of something anyway. And she's saying how she didn't realise until she started doing conventions more recently that Star Trek fans call her Admiral Space Bitch. And she's like, "Oh, I love that. That's brilliant. I just love that."
I was going to say, who's going
Because every time she turns up,
to
you're like, "Oh
object to
shit,
that? I mean, that's awesome.
who's in
Admiral
trouble now?"
Spankish.
There's actually, it's again as an aside, but for me, and a lot of fans have said this in Picard, obviously narrative, we're talking a good 30, 40 years from this point. There's an admiral, an older female admiral at the beginning of the Picard episode where he's going to see Starfleet's help. I don't want to give away because we will have to do that because it's all part of this narrative, ultimately. And there's an admiral there who's the first admiral in modern Trek to swear. And she's basically looks at Picard when he's after whatever, and she's like, sheer fucking hubris. And you're like, but the main point here is the character, the way she was written. I know, the way she was written, every time I've watched it, and many people have said this since, it's like, that should have been a JF. Because the actress is still around, and I'm sure if they'd asked her, she'd be like, oh yeah, I'm up for that. Because that would have been a nice, like, yeah, absolutely, that seems like an Achea thing to do to Picard. Because she's probably thinking, all these fucking times, you never listened. And now, no. But yeah, it's the same as that wasn't her. Because like, that's absolutely should just, and it would have been such a nice thread, But anyway, completely aside.
I'm surprised
when we get to that.
Yes. I was surprised that she wasn't around at the end of the episode as well. She just sort of popped in. She just made her way out as if she was just passing.
It would have made sense,
just on my way.
it?
I'm just on my way to Asda. I just popped into Deep Space Nine. Have a quick word with you, Ben, and then I'll go off and I'll go do my weekly shopping.
I'm on the way to Astasia.
Yeah, it's just so.
On the way back, I'll pop in and just berate you again.
To have a 20-second conversation and then just not be seen again. I'm surprised that she wasn't there. At the end to have a conversation.
I'm going to take a guess that because she usually turns up in Cardassian stories in particular because she seems to be very involved in what's going on out in that part. I'm assuming she works from some starbase, not from Starfleet Command at Earth. She must be in some starbase that's in that sector.
Right,
because she always turns up. It's almost always something to do with Cardassians, like in Journey's End, in a previous couple of appearances. Although once, twice about Borg as well. But she seems to be very much involved in Starfleet tactical stuff. So I'm assuming she must be based in this area, which is why she just happens to be in this sector.
Would make sense, yeah.
Because there is another episode of TNG coming up, which I've mentioned to you before, which I will be getting you to watch in the narrative course of this. And it's the actual follow-up to the Maquis story of this two-parter, and she's back again. And she's just as like, oh god, now what? But it's nice. I like that. Like last time we had Gulliver who crossed over from Next Gen, and now he's in this, and he will turn up again next gen. He will turn up again in this. And I like it. It's like we said last time, it's the world building, and it feels real. There's the same characters just coming back and forth, but it's always in relation to. But it's not as random. They don't just appear randomly. They've obviously got a designated role in this sector, so they always turn up when it's relevant to what their job is, and I like that.
I do feel
like we said before, than where they just dropping names all the
time. Yeah, I do feel like I got more out of these episodes, out of this two-parter, having watched the Journey's End, the Next Gen sort of prequel, as it were. It's rewarding fans or regular viewers, franchise-wide viewers, really, which is good, but without making it inaccessible to people who don't who choose not to watch all of the series. I do like that.
And what's more important about it? It's continuity that's relevant.
Yeah,
it's not just random fan service. Yeah. It's literally part of the world building narrative, and it makes sense that it's happening. But for people who are watching the whole lot, then it's like, oh wow, that's so and so from so and that makes sense. For somebody who's just tuning into this episode for whatever reason, it still makes sense.
Yeah,
So
Yes,
I think that's how continuity should be used. It should make sense.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, let's talk about the episode a wee bit now.
Yeah, there's just to start off with not necessarily a negative, but less of a positive. I was surprised at how that they were already Odo and Sisko and stuff were already aware that Quark had conversations or dealings with the Vulcan woman. And I wondered, because that was all done. There was a lot of focus on that in the first episode, and it was all being done very carefully. There was no indication there that what they were doing was known outside the two of them. And I did. When all of this landed, I thought, okay, that's something that they've obviously decided that they didn't have time to allow it to play out properly or fully, so they've had to just jump in there.
It could be there was a scene. It could be that there was a scene written or recorded and not used in the last episode, perhaps, maybe. But even then, I think we can infer, just based on everything we know from DS9 thus far, that we know Odo's always got tabs on Quarks. He always knows what Quark's up to. I mean, this has been established plenty of times thus far, so it doesn't not scan, but I can see for this particular story, possibly a scene or at least some line somewhere would have helped. Maybe.
It was just a bit of a jump. It was enough of a jump to pull me out momentarily. And I think, okay, my writer brain is now thinking what's the reason for this? Excuse me, sorry. So that was that was the only negative, because I liked that setup in the first episode and everything that was going through, because it was quite unpleasant, but it was obviously Quark going down a road that was very dangerous. I just think it was a bit of a shame just to kind of jump to the end, as it were. Although, of course, it did allow Sisko that wonderful moment when Odo says to him, "How long do I keep him locked up for?" He just goes, "Forever," and just walks away. You think
forever.
That's a mic drop moment. That was wonderful. I loved that. So I
love Odo's reaction at that point as well. The look on his face as he walks off. He didn't say it, which he normally does at this point, but normally at this point Odo would be like, but he didn't. But his face said it. It's like, yes, thanks. Obviously, they're not going to keep him there forever, but he's like, I'm going to leave you there for so long as I can now.
Because he was.
But I imagine he kept him there for days.
Released, did we? We didn't see him released in that episode. He was sort of sharing the cell later with the Vulcan woman, whose name I can't remember, which is stupid because we haven't long watched it. And she,
I don't know, Tala or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And I liked all of that stuff with her trying to mind meld with Gul Dukat. Just lovely to see stuff like that. That's an established kind of species skill, and then to find that it doesn't work. And that either another species is resistant to it, or that they can condition themselves to be resistant to it. I love that. I thought it was great.
Yeah, the idea that the Vulcan mind meld is so well known by people now. It's very less known back in TOS here, but now everyone knows about it. It's the fact to the point where Cardassian operatives, for instance, are deliberately conditioned and trained to avoid it if it happens, because they know, we know what Vulcans are like. What I like about this, talking of Dukat, is I think more than anything, I think this is the two episodes that really start to not redefine Dukat, but make him an actual ongoing character properly, because he's turned up here and there throughout. He turned up Did we have that episode with that Cardassian boy? Yeah, that was this season, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. That was one of the really.
Yeah.
That was a
And of course,
great episode.
he turned up in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always get confused with another episode in season 3, but yes. But yeah, Dukat's been back and forth ever since episode 1, where he's very much a background character.
Yeah.
He's been slowly brought to the fore, but this time you really get to explore him as a character and the nuance behind him, because obviously we learn quite a bit about him that we didn't know before. And I like that throughout most of this episode, it's kind of seeded in the last one, of his utter disdain and almost bemusement of how Starfleet handle stuff like this. And he's just like, what are you doing? And how he's just so bemused and disdainful of the fact of these new terrorists being so fucking useless at what they do. It's like, you're not very good at this, are you? And he literally says that to him, doesn't he? He's like, you're not very good at this at all. And I'm like, yeah, he's like, if this was me, I would be doing this. And he's like coaching them. This is how you do stuff. This is how you get what you want. And I'm like, I like it. It brings out a nice quirky side to him, I suppose, in a way.
It's definitely it's an episode,
an interesting character,
or a story. 2 episodes really, that definitely sort of round his character out a lot more. Certainly, I certainly don't get the feeling that we know all there is to know about him by any means, but it's just. But we found
the scene, and you see the scene behind me at the moment.
Yeah.
Because the scene behind me right now is, of course, one of the scenes we're just talking about between him and Sisko. And I will say, I think you mentioned this in the last episode, the chemistry, the buzz between Sisko and Dukat, Avery, and Mark Alemo is so good.
It is.
Like when they're in scenes together, even if it's only a short scene, it's just like sparks. They absolutely spark for each other. It's
kind of sort of testosterone sparks. So is very good. Much better, a much more realistic kind of relationship between the two than between Sisko and Hudson.
Oh God, yes, absolutely. I thought you were going to say Picard and Q then, but yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as you know, I'm not overly keen on the actor playing Hudson, so I don't think that helps for me. I don't know if you feel differently there, but I think the actor, well, as we said before, chemistry on screen is very much about the right actors getting the right ones in the right role at the right time. Doesn't matter how well the script's written, because the script's written fine. There's some really great dialogue in this episode, but the guy who plays Hudson, his delivery is always just like just a bit off, and there's no spark, there's nothing between him and Sisko that just on the surface make you feel like they really were friends. You don't see it, you don't feel it. This is why I think we've heard of other friends of Sisko's, and I'm sure we've seen 1 or 2 of his Starfleet friends by now. I'm sure we must have done. I don't know, have we?
I don't remember.
Have we seen any of his Starfleet friends yet? Maybe not then. Maybe not. So I suppose I was going to say it would have been better if they picked one that we've already seen, but if we haven't really seen many yet, we've heard of some, but I don't think we've actually seen many.
Yeah.
We don't get a whole lot of Starfleet externally coming onto the station, really, do we, at this point?
No.
Not very often.
And that's probably a good thing, actually, because
that's a shame.
When they do, they tend to. I think I said last time. My immediate thought when anyone else does turn up is that they're either responsible for whatever's going on in some way, or they're going to try and undermine whoever's in charge.
They're going to cause a problem
in some way. So when they do show up, I always my immediate thought is that this is a problem. Not that not that there's lots of Starfleet people around all the time. So, oh dear, sorry, I'm getting really blocked up.
And it makes sense
here,
that it's not, because I
the
think
episode goes on. Oh.
Decongestion. No, I think it's good that you don't see much Starfleet because, as you say, when they turn up, it makes you think, "Oh, something's up." But also, when they do turn up, it obviously means something important's going down. And it also gives the sense that Bajor and indeed DS9 is quite a distance away from the main Starfleet shipping line type of things.
Yeah.
That they're kind of out there on their own a little bit, and that's good because that's kind of the whole point, really, isn't it? That Starfleet's administrating this thing, but it's really Sisko and his team, and Starfleet themselves don't have a whole lot of involvement in it. I think that helps.
Yes, because they've been left.
Keeps that sense of they're on their own here. Yeah.
Another aspect I did really like.
So, what do you think of the whole market?
Oh, I was just going to say about the about this episode in particular, but the two-parter as a whole, is that the production team are continuing with a kind of a sort of it's like a grey morality. So it's nothing's black and white, nothing's cut and dried. It's so with the Maquis. You could see that what they were potentially what they were doing was wrong, but also that what the Cardassians were doing was wrong as well. So there was it's not necessarily just a plain good and bad situation. It's grades of guilt, grades of morality, or whatever. And obviously that was played out through to the end as well. And Sisko, it wasn't going to fire on Hudson at the end. He's leaving things open so that hopefully the situation can achieve a natural kind of peaceful resolution, or just potentially just kind of like calm down. Go away. It's not someone coming in with a big foot stamping on it and saying no. This is how it's going to be going forward. And again, I really like that because that tends to be how real life plays out. It's you tend not to get people who are. Well, I say this. There are probably other instances where you do, but you tend not to get people who are just horribly evil in real life, and people who are absolute saints. It's always it's always muddled lines in the middle, and so I think Star Trek taking that line reflects things in real life.
Yeah, that takes me to 2 points actually that I was going to mention, like some behind the scenes stuff actually. One, as I mentioned to you before we started filming, there's a scene in this episode that Ira Steven Baird, who wrote the episode, has always kind of wanted to get into Star Trek since he's been involved in Trek at this point a few years now on Next Gen and that. And he's always wanted to explore one particular thing in particular. And that is the idea of why is Earth the paradise? What effect does that have elsewhere? So he's always wanted to have that line thrown in there somewhere about it's easy to be a saint in paradise. And so he's like, it's finally because at last I've got a story where I can really, yeah. So what consequences does that have outside
scene, a great moment.
Yeah, it's a good line because it does get to the bare bones of Starfleet. Certainly, Starfleet headquarters, Earth. Earth is perfect now; it's this utopia place now. But on the outside of Starfleet, outside of Starfleet HQ anyway, certainly as they go further out, it becomes more dicey and more grey, like you said. And Ira's always said that's the sort of thing he wanted to explore. So now he's getting to the point where he's sort of slowly becoming showrunner of this of DS9. Boy, is he going to explore that a lot, because that's something he's absolutely wanted to do. A second point is something I was checking out before this. When you mentioned about the Hudson thing, how Sisko, you weren't too sure, was he going to fire on Hudson at the end or not? Ira Steven Bear, he wanted to get Hudson killed off at the end. He wanted a line under it because of it needed that impactful boot at the end. But apparently Michael Piller, who's still exec at this point, he absolutely no, he vetoed it. He put his foot down. But when they rewatched the dailies before they laid it all flat, but obviously it's all shot and everything. When he watched the dailies, apparently he suddenly said to Iris, like, you know what? We should have killed him off. You're right. It needed that punch at the end. But of course, it was all done, so it's too late. Maybe he's gone home, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, watching the end of the episode, like, you do get a sense, like, if this was a bit later in DS9's run, then absolutely Sisko would have fired on him to stop him from getting away, almost certainly. But at this point, you can see in the writing, they want to get there. They want to push it to that point. But you can see they haven't, not the balls, but they're being held back from doing it.
Well, yes, they did everything but
because
that, basically.
I know where it's. Yeah, but I think Ira and Michael are both right. I think actually it needed that little kick at the end. I think you needed that. The cost, I think, needed to be a bit higher. I think, because I mean, it's good that they make a point of it's not over yet. The Maquis is still out there. We've stopped this problem right now of them being given weapons and whatnot, but the problem's still there. And as Sisko says, I've only delayed the inevitable because these guys are obviously going to be constantly not so tormented. They're not. No, the Cardassians are going to be on their back. Basically, they're not going to make their life easy in the DMZ. So it's inevitable that the Maquis is going to keep fighting, and they will get weapons from somewhere at some point. And I like that. It's like, well, this ain't over. Because in other Star Trek, that'd been it. Done. Next story. Not mention it again. But no, it's still a threat. It's still out there, and it's going to come back and bite them in the ass.
Exactly, and I do. I liked that. I thought that was a good reflection. I think of a real life kind of moral dilemma situation. And it's very easy to sit watching it and think, I should have blown him up. That's what I'd have done. But you put yourself in that situation and think, actually, no, potentially not. And that's for me is probably the strongest sort of piece of evidence of the friendship between Sisko and Hudson. That that moment there near the end, I think that's that in itself sells everything that I've seen up to that point, where I might have thought, not too sure about this, but actually that moment sold it. That and possibly the look on Sisko's face when Hudson shoots his uniform bag. So that was that
was a good moment.
Good. It was very so
I think
another one, another really good positive positive experience episode, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those episodes where there's not a whole lot to say because it was just really good. All we're going to be doing is just saying, this was good, that was good, that was amazing, this was brilliant. And like you said at the beginning, there's
moment there.
The only negative probably, the only negative really, as you said, was just the link between them finding out about Quark. But beyond that, I think everything follows through. I think there's also, again, this is just because I know what the show is capable of eventually. It still feels, and this sounds daft saying it, but it still feels very Star Trek in the sense that, or Star Trek of the 80s, I should say, and indeed the 60s and 70s, really, that they're not quite willing to push it just yet. Because there's some dark shit that's going on, some really grey, complicated stuff that's going on in this story. And the fact that it's obviously not ended is a good indication that they're finally starting to push the envelope of Star Trek or what Star Trek can be. But it's still, the resolution in some ways still feels very Star Trek in that they've not quite really got into it as much as you can see they kind of want to.
Yeah.
But again, this an age where they're pushing the boundaries as much as they're able to at this point. So I'll give it.
You just reminded me, actually, there was a bit of, when I did the old info dump at the start, I forgot to mention that this episode was originally broadcast on the 2nd of May, 1994. So there we go.
Yes, it was. See, we're getting closer to the actual 30th anniversary. At some point this year, we're going to, I suspect, I hope maybe we'll actually end up watching an episode that's almost exactly on the day. What's going to happen sooner or later?
Well, it's getting away from us at the moment because we've got the Doctor Who's in between. If we hadn't been getting the Doctor Who's in between,
well, that's true. Well, yeah, I guess that's true. Even because the season breaks, of course, will make it longer, won't it? Yeah, or maybe we're just getting further away then.
Oh, actually, well, no.
Maybe we'll catch up
about the season breaks. Yeah, no, the season break should allow us to catch up a bit. So, yes, it should happen at some point.
It will allow us to catch up eventually.
Yes,
it'll be the last episode of the series. We're like, yay! Took 7 years, but we got to the actual 30th anniversary.
50 years after its original broadcast,
or whatever it is.
Episode 7, season 7, episode 1.
Us two old men.
Yes.
While we're in our 60s. Yeah.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. So, yeah, that's that.
Before we wrap up then, because I think this is one of those pretty straightforward episodes, I did discover one fact of on this day in Star Trek, which on this day being the 2nd of March.
2nd of March.
In 1949, on this day in Star Trek history, long before Star Trek itself was even a thing, Gates McFadden, or Cheryl Gates McFadden, as she's used to be known, was born. That would be Dr. Crusher.
Wow.
1949.
Indeed. Gosh.
It's scary to think how old these people are now.
I know, it is. Good grief. Well, there we go.
She looks great, but it's
Happy birthday,
so
Dr.
easy to forget that people age. Yeah. Happy birthday, Gates.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating.
Andy.
It's actually a birthday today, isn't it? Hello.
It is, yes. Happy birthday, Gates.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Gates. Cheryl.
What have we got coming up next? Oh, obviously, next.
Our
next session will be episodes 4, 5, and 6 of the Keys of Marinus. We'll be back on the Who watch. So that's going to be exciting.
Who, yes.
But
next
in terms
Deep
of
Space
DS9, yes, coming next on Deep Space Nine.
Okay, so the next episode on DS9 in 2 weeks' time will be The Wire.
The Wire. No, it's not. That wasn't a pilot for the eventual series, The Wire, was it?
No, actually not. Not even thematically.
Right.
Nothing.
The Wire.
Nothing. Nothing. I did think you were going to say that.
No idea what that might be about at all, other than it might involve a wire at some point. Maybe. So,
metaphorically speaking.
Gosh.
It's a metaphorical wire.
It's a metaphorical wire.
I will tell you this, though. This will make you... Yeah, I will tell you this, and this will definitely make you kind of like look forward to it. It is a Garak episode.
Ooh. Actually, that'll be episode 22, won't it? How many episodes are there in season 2? We can't be that far off the end now, can we?
No, we're not. I think it'll be 26, 25 usually.
Okay. So we've got about another 3 or 4.
As memory serves, we've got in this order, as I recall, this is me off the top of my head, and I feel sure I'm right. So we've got The Wire, followed by Crossover, followed by The Collaborator.
Ooh.
Although in between crossover and Collaborator, we will have Preemptive Strike on TNG.
Okay.
We'll actually have a discussion on that one because it's kind of very relevant to this particular episode that we just watched.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be followed by The Collaborator, which, that seems fairly self-evident. Bear in mind the show we're watching. And then the season finale, which is called The Gem Hadar.
Ooh, okay.
So yes, we are only
fabulous
4-5 weeks in terms of DS9 away to the finale of this season. Ooh.
Cool.
Exciting
stuff.
Yes.
And as we know with Star Trek, it always gets better from season 3.
Wrap up. You go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to wrap up, haven't I? So yes, there we are, everyone. That has been, we have been the Replimat, and we have been talking about the Maquis Part 2. So join us next time when we will be back on our Who Watch, giving kind of commentary and opinions on episodes 4, 5 and 6 of The Keys of Marinus. But until then, I have been Tim, and he has been...
I have been Andy.
Indeed. So, this episode, as always, or as is usual with our episodes, this episode will go live on Patreon as soon as Andy can manage it. And we'll follow on YouTube about a week later. Is it a week, or is it a few days?
Give or take.
Sometime in the future.
Well,
and
it's supposed to be a week. It's supposed to be a week, but the last episode of DS9 that we recorded hasn't actually gone on YouTube yet, so it's still 2 weeks. So who knows? It'll be on YouTube eventually.
We may get both Maquis
Part 1 and Part 2, but it'll definitely on Patreon.
Cool. And on Spotify,
maybe I'll do that.
If you can't stand the look of us, but you just want to listen to us, which is perfectly understandable at the end of the day. If you want to interact with us and everything, then our social media links and so forth will be in the comments beneath the video. And that's probably it, isn't it? Do I need to say anything else? I can never remember what to say on these wrap-ups. That's pretty much everything covered. So, thank you again. If you've watched us and listened to us,
that covers it all.
Yes. I hope you've enjoyed it, and do tune in again and join us next time. Until then, as is tradition and nothing to do with Star Trek at all, bye-bye, Duggan.
Bye-bye.